Hey now, and welcome back to a episode of Refreshing Thoughts. It's been a while. I am your host, Chris Fresh. You can follow Refreshing Thoughts at Refreshing Thoughts Pod on Instagram, and we are on Facebook as well. The team. Well, technically, I do have a team in Jesse helped me design the logo, and a lot of people have given me a lot of advice. So you're all part of the Refreshing Thoughts team. But yeah, how cool is my vintage market find Cringer slash Battle Cat shirt? I don't know how well it's coming across. It caught my eye. It was $15, which was a bargain. And I don't usually like buying secondhand clothes because being a bigger brother, they don't usually fit well. But I've lost a bit of weight recently, but also something weird about it. I'd never wear a secondhand hat or shoes, like they're my limit. But the shirt was $15 and it caught my eye because it was a Radio Velvet shirt. And Radio Velvet were people who put on a Masters of Universe Expo here in Melbourne, if you ever heard about that. And they had exclusive shirts. So I was rapt to be able to pick up this one because I thought it was really cool. I think maybe Dirty Uncle Mitch of the Geek Dudes podcast, who I've finally done a banner for at Geek Dudes. That's the podcast where you probably know me the most from. If you don't know me from professional wrestling, at Wrestle Rock and Renegades of Wrestling. Or if you're a Hey Hey It's Saturday fan and you listen to Hey Hey It's the podcast, Paul Jones does a really good job of running our social media over there. But anyway, as I was saying, I picked up that shirt at the vintage market and was really happy with it. And I've washed it and stuff. It smells great. It doesn't feel like somebody gross has been wearing it. So I was really happy with that. I'm conscious of the audio only listeners. I've been doing a lot of unboxings recently, and that is not what I wanted this channel to be. It's hard because you get cool stuff and you're like, now I want to show it on camera because I've got this video medium. It's exactly what it's for. So I'm going to open it on camera. So now it's like Christmas and stuff comes in and you're waiting to open it on camera because it's a good way to create content and drive people to watching the channel. But I am a terrible unboxer, as you'll see, and a terrible reviewer. But also, I understand people enjoy hearing me in the audio medium. They do have Geek Dudes and Hey Hey It's a podcast to listen to if they want to do that. But I don't just want to be an unboxing channel or a review channel because I I don't collect critically and I don't collect in that way. I'm not trying to convince you to buy something that I like. I buy out of passion and I buy out of something that speaks to me and connects to me. I always use it's almost like a Chris Fresh catchphrase these days of I'm trying to impress 10-year-old me. Well, that's what it feels like. And if I could see my collection, would I be thinking, wow, this is really cool? And I would like to think that little me um, would think I'd won the lottery and made it. And I have not. I'm just reckless. Um, I've got a pretty big delivery coming next week, and that will be an unboxing extravaganza of contraband that has made its way into Australia. Forbidden fruit. And for those following along, I think you got a pretty good idea of what I'm about to unbox next week on Refreshing Thoughts. But that will be next week. This episode, I sort of wanted to talk a little bit about. I've talked about this stuff on Geek Dudes before, but it really affected my mental health, which is interesting. I've had a hard time recently. Um, had some, I've talked about I've suffered from bipolar. I've had some medication change, and it can mess with you as that kicks in. So I've been high, and the idea was to level things out, but it usually in the process takes you lower. And I've wrestled with that a bit, which is probably not help with motivation, but I took a week off over Easter because it was great because the way Australian public holidays work is you could take 3 days and end up with 7 days off. It was a pretty good deal because of Anzac Day and Easter. We're in there and I did that, and you get all these ideas of what you're gonna do. I'm gonna get all the shirts that are too big for me now, and I'm gonna air back them and put them away because, heaven forbid I don't trust that I'm gonna remain this size when I've gone up and down my entire life. And also, create space. And I had decided I've got my cool space. I'm never going to have more room than what I've got now. So if it's sitting in tubs in the shed, I'm going to go through that stuff and I'm going to sell it and just move it on. And that's where the trouble began. So I started to go through there, and all the stuff was packed away in tubs and it's in there, but it's not in any particular order. We sort of moved in a hurry this year, and it started to become overwhelming. So I grabbed out a few tubs to go through and I brought them into my space. And what happened was the second my new space became messy, it depressed me and bummed me out. And I did not feel comfortable and I hated the idea that stuff was everywhere. And even as neat as I tried keeping it, it's still a process to go through and sort of sort through that. You then have to, give stuff a bit of a clean, take photos, and then it's like, am I going to list on eBay or am I going to list on Marketplace? Well, if you list on eBay, there are a lot of fees. I've noticed people have not been paying like recently, like they just back out, like they bid and they don't pay. There are a lot of fees. You then have to pack up and you have to send. If you sell on Marketplace, a couple of things happen. You get a million questions and a million inboxes, which can be overwhelming. You've then the trade off to not having to send stuff is you've got to have people arrange times and come over and pick it up. And then if you share it in places, if you want to share as many places as possible, everybody is going to see that you're listing and think that you're in some sort of financial crisis. Where it's like, no, I'm just trying to move stuff on, and I hate the process so much that I'm not trying to maximize profit when I'm selling. I'm just trying to move it on. Like if I took each individual item and list it and tried to get as much money as humanly possible for it, I think I'd be completely miserable and it would take forever. And I don't have the patience and it becomes a job. I've described before, anytime something feels like it's work to me, you will lose me. Be it professional wrestling, be it podcasting, be it collecting. If it feels like a job, um, it 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 won't. It doesn't work for me, brother. So yeah, it was hard, and I listed some stuff, and a couple of people have come over, and they were pretty cool. There was one guy that came over to grab some Ghostbuster stuff, and he had his little, I think, 4-year-old with him, and this little kid was the cutest, and we were talking about toys and stuff, and I showed him my collection, and we were just talking about collecting, and my dad was cool and stuff. But then people get in your head of you can't let people see what you've got because are you worried about you're going to get robbed or you're going to get rolled or stuff? And it's like, guess I haven't really thought about the idea that somebody's going to come in and kick down the door and just start grabbing stuff. I guess they could, but I guess that's any of us. Like I don't know. So yeah, the whole thing is weird, which makes me just then want to go, I'm just going to grab everything that's in the shed and just burn it. Just burn it. It's all gone. I'm free. It's not even a discussion then, is it? It's just gone. So yeah, so I don't know. I have found that mentally overwhelming this week. Um and yeah, and look, I know the Toy Power guys, at the Toy Power podcast. If you haven't listened to that, it's Australia's best toy-based podcast. You can see if you're watching it, it's at Toy Power Podcast on all your socials of choice. Um, they went through it. A member of their team, Darren, loveliest guy, he passed away too young, and he had a ginormous collection. And the boys all went in together to move that on to help his parents out financially, and because the sharks start coming, don't they? They start knocking on these elderly parents' doors, going, "I'll offer you $1,000 for the lot" and stuff. And it's like, don't rip people off, you know. Um, so the boys, I don't believe, I'm not a religious man, but for the term of the expression, they did the Lord's work. And they went through and meticulously, Frank, who's great with this sort of stuff, had a spreadsheet, and they sold stuff. And Brett and Sarah, Brett, who's been on Refreshing Thoughts before, um, they gave them tables at a toy fair that I attended to be able to move some of Darren's stuff on. I believe Lobo's Collectibles here in Melbourne bought some of the Master Universe stuff. And yeah, they moved it on, but it nearly broke them. I'm pretty sure. It's a lot of work, and I'm certainly not at that point, but it is an exhausting process. And then the one thing I have in my collection that's really caused a crisis of faith is magazines. So when I was young, I loved toys, loved going to the video library, and I loved going into the newsagents. I loved video game magazines, and I loved professional wrestling magazines. And over the years, chasing the memories of going through the newsagents, I used to have my loop at the Northland Shopping Centre in Preston in Melbourne, where I'd go in, I'd hit this newsagent, I'd check out this toy store, I'd go to Kmart, I'd do this, I'd go to the other newsagents because there would, could you believe, a shopping centre could sustain two. And look at that, and you'd be looking at the magazines and reading them. So magazines mean a lot to me. I have a lot of magazines, and they weigh a ton. So I can either list them individually, but there's no point keeping them. I'm not enjoying them. I'm not reading them. My idea of one day being rich enough that I could set up a replica news agency that just has magazines in there, and I can walk in there anytime I want, like a crazy person, and recreate some random feeling that I had when I was young, or like people have done with video libraries and stuff. I think David Damage of Dave's Video Graveyard, he had almost a video library esque set up at one point, which was beautiful, but hard to maintain, particularly in a renting age and everything like that. It's just not going to happen. So, what's the point of these magazines? They're just sitting there, and if other people can enjoy them or want to buy a lot of them and they want to break it up and move it on and sell it, they can do that. So, I was looking at this and I was like, what am I going to do? They weigh a ton. So then I'm going to have to take photos of them and put them on Marketplace and hope somebody takes them. And then it's like, well, I'm definitely like just taking a bath on it. And that's fine. It's not going to stop me from buying magazines. I still enjoy the process of buying a magazine and reading it. But I think the idea of a magazine is they're not to be collected. They're meant to be consumed and tossed, but we are who we are, and we're collectors and hoarders. And um, so I'm looking at it, and like Dodsy, Michael Dodds, he's a big video game collector. Like, he could understand. I've got like a lot of 90s video game magazines. And some of them really cool, some of them I would hang on to, but how many copies of Megatech do I need? Like, you know, Jungle Strike and Urban Strike are great games, but I don't need to read everybody's review of them. I do enjoy seeing artwork, and I could go through and take photos of things, but I'm not going to scan them. I could donate them, but I'd like to get a bit of money for them, and stuff. And by donate them, I mean to like people like Forgotten Worlds, who are doing a video game magazine about video game magazines, which I think is really cool. A bit like the Kramer idea of a coffee table book about coffee tables. Um, but yeah, so sure, I could set up at a toy fair and go $5 each and just put them there and have people I don't want to talk to me come up and talk to me and try and beat me down to this and that. And it's like, I just want to live. Like, it's not how I operate. But this is a hole I've dug myself in. Um, So yeah, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. It's a lot to take in. And another weird thing happened. So uh, sorry for the audio listeners, but what came in the mail is, if you can look at this, is from Zing and EB Games, down from $99 to $47. I got the Darth Maul and Sith Speeder sent to me in the mail. I did not purchase this. Somebody who has my name and my address sent that. I think it's cool. It's not something really I'd collect. I did see a Star Wars item that I thought was I would buy, and that was at Celebration. They had the Ronin and the little droid from the Star Wars Visions animated series. That thing is a piece of art. I would collect that. He'd almost be desk worthy. I think, oh, poor old Mecha Godzilla, always on the edge of being kicked off the desk. But that is cool. That is cool. Like, don't get me wrong. Um, but yeah, I don't know what to do with it. It's funny because going through stuff, I found that I had a Black Series Jabba the Hutt and Slave Leia, which is not common these days. And I sort of thought, oh, it's kind of cool. I'm going to put it on display, but I got to show you. It's sort of creepy. Now I'm going to do my camera trick, which I should never do, but it's just a bit of a turnaround. So, excuse me. Can you see that? Like, I don't know how well it's going to focus on it, but Leia's sort of just lounging in a sexy bikini, and Jabba's just there. But it's like, oh no, what have I done? There I go. Am I back? Am I framed right? I'm definitely not framed right. It doesn't matter. But I was like, I don't know. I- Like, it looks cool and stuff, but it is sort of weird how she's just there. Like, maybe I should be displaying her choking him or something, but his tongue doesn't pop out. But I do love Return of the Jedi. It's my probably Star Wars of choice now. It's gonna drive me crazy. It's probably my Star Wars of choice. Because it was the first Star Wars experience I had in the cinema. And I've talked about how I've had a weird relationship with Star Wars. In I met Jesse through the Star Wars community, and um, a lot of that blew up, which affected my enjoyment of it. The Rise of Skywalker was probably my biggest cinema Star Wars heartbreak I've experienced, where it was like, oh, this one really wasn't for me. I don't begrudge anybody who loves it. But I think in hindsight, the sequel trilogy for me felt like a journey where they didn't quite know. So I've got an itchy back, and that probably doesn't bother people on audio podcast, but on a video, it must be annoying. Um, it felt like they went on a journey, a disjointed journey. And I know there's a lot of arguments that George Lucas, he didn't have a plan and blah blah. This really felt like it. There's times in wrestling when I'm writing something, but I don't necessarily have a plan or know where I'm getting to. It's not all a perfect science. As long as you don't feel it, it doesn't matter. But if you can feel the disjointedness, well, then there's a problem. And yeah, I enjoyed the ride of the sequel trilogy. I just don't want to particularly at the moment go back and revisit it. But what I am going back to revisit is for the 20th anniversary, Revenge of the Sith is back in the cinemas. And I am an unapologetic prequel fan. And I broached the subject with Jessie, not knowing how she'd feel about it. And I got given a gift card, a Hoyt's gift card at Christmas. So it's not like it's costing us anything. It was like, do you want to go see the Bubble Opera on Saturday night? And she was like, yeah, I'll go. And I was like, cool. So we're going to go see Revenge of the Sith on the extreme screen at Hoyt's. So that's going to be really cool. As they're imperfectly perfect, those movies, particularly Revenge of the Sith. And the scene of Anakin and Palpatine at the Bubble Opera is one of my favorite Star Wars moments. It's so campy. It's so perfect. It's so diabolical. I love it. Like, I will have a grin ear from ear, and told you I've got that Mo Sislak smile. I you know, it's yeah, it's gonna be a wild trip seeing that on the big screen. I haven't seen Revenge of the Sith in the cinemas for a long time. Now, I'm recording this at 9:43 AM, so you're gonna hear a lot of Australia's nature in the background, because usually in bed when I'm recording, so you're not gonna hear birds and stuff. I'm just gonna have a sip of sugar-free Red Bull for the working man. So I've got some form of energy. I don't drink coffee, but I've got a terrible Red Bull addiction. Um, One day I'm gonna clutch my heart and keel over, and they'll go, "What was in his system?" And it was like, tasty cheeseless snack and sugar-free Red Bull. No, it's like, yeah, he went out the way he wanted to go out. Um, it's just my diet of choice at the moment. My daughter and Jesse keep telling me that I'm gonna burn out on it, because they say you always just over have something and then you get sick of it. But it's like, I haven't burnt out yet. Um, but yeah, but Darth Maul wasn't the only thing I got. But if you sent me Darth Maul, thank you. But can you reveal yourself? Because I keep getting gifts and don't know who's giving them to me. The mystery of Stone Down and Rock On was very kindly Trent of the Toy Power podcast. It was what I thought in there's Toy Power again. If you want to follow them, please go follow them. They create far better content than I. Um, he mistakenly sent me Stone Down and Rock On instead of Roton and Tristoid. So all I ask is, Trent, can you please pass on the other two for Sarah Owen to put on her carry-on when she comes over here in a couple of weeks? That'd be great. Thank you. You can't see that wink in audio form, but trust me, there was a wink. Um, but yeah, I'd love to know who sent me that. But I am going to do a classic fresh unopening, which I hate doing. But I've got a great package. I probably just showed my address and everything on there and all that on there. I probably shouldn't have done that. It doesn't matter. It means you can just send me more stuff. But when you see a package like this, I think it was Mad Hatter that said it's either drugs or body parts that get sent in packets like this. But it's my orange knife of doom that Paul Jones accused me of pulling on him recently. When you see a package like this, it usually means it's come from AliExpress. And this has come from AliExpress. And I'm very excited about what this may be. I'm just cutting away. Fantastic for audio listeners. So I have removed the outer shell and we just have the bubble wrap. Now I have to be careful, because imagine if it's not what I hoped, because it felt very early for this to be solicited. But when I saw it solicited for a price that you pretty much are going to pay at retail, I thought, my goodness, in this day and age of tariffs and uncertainty, and who knows when this stuff will come out. Oh yes, oh baby, oh, inject this into my veins. First, allow me to show you, or you can hear me say, Jada Toys Blanca. Oh my goodness, he is a big boy. He weighs a ton. No wonder this package was heavy, because that can only mean one thing. That can only mean Jada Toys, Sagat, and Blanca. Like, look at those two. That is amazing. Oh my goodness. Jada are doing the Lord's work with these. Like, these figures are amazing. There's the back of the packaging. Like, I'm not going to open them on air, but holy goodness. Like, Jada Toys are creating one of the best toy lines in toys today. When you consider price point, aesthetics, paint jobs, accessories, everything, this is amazing. Whew, whew. That's an arrival. It will be beaten this week, but that's pretty cool, um, a pretty cool arrival. Like I'm excited to get into them, and yeah, I'll probably use a thumbnail of them as bait. I hate making thumbnails. How unsexy is the thumbnail process? This whole process is not fun for me. It is, but it isn't. I shouldn't say that. It's more. It's how do I describe it? It's just not natural, and I hate it. I hate anything when I it doesn't come naturally to me. It's I like just being good at stuff, and I don't have to think, and the force flows within me. Um, but to get back to Star Wars, as I say that, I'd love to ask you guys and put in the comments below and like this video as well. And comment on our Facebook if you're listening to the audio. Um, or maybe you're one of the 6 people that have subscribed to our Patreon at which you can see the link on the screen for the Refreshing Thoughts podcast Patreon. Thank you to everybody that has given me your money. You have covered my transistor hosting fees. We didn't get StreamYard, but just that makes a big difference. That hosts Refreshing Thoughts, Geek Dudes, and hey, it's a podcast in audio form, and it is greatly appreciated. But yeah, but like, where are you with Star Wars? What was your first Star Wars heartbreak? Do you still love it? Do you still watch it? The Toy Geeks, Dan Larson and Jay Glatfelter have been doing an awesome series on the mid-90s Powers of the Force. I think it's Powers of the Force 2 is what it's commonly known as. It's a trip down memory lane because I think for a lot of us, that is our memories, our re-entry point of going from kids to sort of teenagers to, wow, we're going to get toys again. And I'm going to have on Refreshing Thoughts soon, um, Dirty Uncle Mitch of the Geek Dudes podcast. And I'm going to chat to Mitch about what it was like because Mitch is a little older than me. He's probably Mitch 5 or 6 years older than I am, which at that age is a big gap. And I want to find out what it was like as a collector in the late 80s, early 90s. Mitch was early to mid 90s. Mitch was into comics. He was into toys. Like, what did it look like? What did it feel like? I want to experience through a clearer memory than what my youthful one would be. Mitch was young. Well, I'll make a joke that he's old, but do you know what I mean? Like, if you're 18 and 19 and this stuff is coming out, your experience is going to be different than sort of being 12 or 13. So I can't wait to hear his thoughts on that. Another episode that I do hope to do will be Batmania with my one of my best friends, Julian James. He and I have spoken about what we will do here. So I I do have some concepts and some ideas as this is starting to find its feet and move along a little bit more of what we're going to do because there's some cool topics. It doesn't all have to be what toy turned up and here's me opening it. That there's plenty of channels that do that. I think we can offer some unique tales and talk to some unique people. And it's hard to get out here where I live in the eastern suburbs in Melbourne, but through video technology, a lot of these people are set up at home that I can just video call them, and providing we've got stable internet, we can do it online. I do prefer the organicness of being together, but yeah, I'd love to have Digital Beard Owen Jones on to talk about his love of Power Rangers because it's not a love I share. I'm a Voltron boy, and to me, Power Rangers felt like this hokey live action Voltron ripoff. Now, before you start explaining Kamen Rider and the history of it all in Japan, I can already hear. I'm just saying it's how it felt to an Australian kid in the 90s. I would love to have a chat with Owen and hear about his love of Power Rangers and how he discovered it. Davey Damage is another person. Of course, everybody from Toy Power I would like on. I guarantee you I never get Scott and Trent. But when Frank and Ben appear, it'll be a good time. But yeah, it's Star Wars. I haven't met too many people that don't have some form that are collectors that don't have some form of affection for Star Wars. So I'd like to know what was it like for you? Like when the re-releases came out in the 90s, to me it was such a big deal. It was like we're going back to the cinema and stuff. And I don't recall being overly offended by the changes, but I do remember going, it's like seeing Jabba going, whoa, like in A New Hope, of it not looking great. And then I'm sort of charmed by the toy that came out at the time that it looks so janky, much like the Jabba in the special editions. I do remember the commercial where they were talking about that the OT, the original uncut OT was going to go away, and it was like get it before it goes, sort of thing. And you hear that and you go, yeah, 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 sure. And then they released the gold and silver box sets, and I have those box sets, as I'm sure everybody does, and if not, go to the op shop and you'll get them for $2, because I think everybody bought them. And it's funny, in hindsight, I hated widescreen because I had a 48 centimeter TV at home. Widescreen just letterboxed it, and it was like I'm squinting to be able to see the movie. I want a full 4 by 3 screen, excuse me. But now I'd be mortified if something wasn't widescreen, as we've got these giant widescreen movies now. But the idea of when you saw those X-wings line up and you got to see all these ships, and it was expanded. Yeah, I wasn't a widescreen fan um, in the 90s, which is funny, because it's ridiculous not to want to see as much of what should be in the movie as humanly possible. But yeah, it's the, the 90s were a good time. It wasn't a perfect time, but so many cool, geeky, collectible things happen, and we're always going to be nostalgic for youth. I remember my dad was nostalgic for the 50s and 60s. We're nostalgic for the 80s and 90s. There'll be kids that are nostalgic, like I think like Davey and Owen and stuff, and Mikey J. They're probably nostalgic for the 90s and noughties. I never did like calling them the noughties. Like it's what's going to happen. My daughter is nostalgic for Tangled and Rapunzel. It's all generational based, and like even though hey, my dad can burn, right? He's dead now. It doesn't matter. I'm not a fan. But, he didn't collect toys, but the music and stylings of like Tony Curtis and using Brill Cream, and even though dad looked like Gargamel, he didn't really have hair. He really did look like Gargamel, my dad. Um, he and the music and the cars and everything. You hear George Lucas talk about that. That's their form of nostalgia. Like they weren't really into toys like we were or we are. Um, but yeah, it's nostalgia is like that has always existed, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts of that era. I can't wait to talk to Mitch about Image Comics and the rise of Todd Budd and Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee. And the cartoons are hitting there, and he's grown up as a comic book guy, and he's seeing these comic books that he's read explode into popularity. And we saw a similar explosion of like the cartoons, because that was really a lot of my entry point was the X-Men cartoon and the Spider-Man cartoon. And I keep referencing that Iron Man cartoon. A lot of people had Batman the animated series. I sort of came to that later. Gargoyle stuff. And then we saw them turn into movies, and that expand. And then those that have grown up on the movies, I don't know what they'll see. Like, what's the evolution for them? Maybe it's that the characters are turning up in Fortnite. That's all my son wants to do when he's home is play Fortnite. Although he did impress me. He's, occasionally if he's a good boy, he'll get like V-Bucks for Fortnite. And he goes, "Dad, you'll never believe who I've got, what skins I've got." And I'm just picturing, I haven't seen it, but Silence of the Lambs. I go, "What skins you got, buddy?" And I've got Krang and Bebop and Rocksteady. And he was so proud that he had Bebop and Rocksteady because he knows I love Bebop and Rocksteady. And I just thought that was rad. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, but I will say thank you for listening. I'm not going to go on for too long. You've got a zillion podcasts as there is to listen to. I apologize that this is a little late. Um, but yeah, it it just it overwhelmed me a little bit trying to move some stuff on. I could not keep air in my turtle blimp. It was such a bummer. It's so big I don't know where I'd display it, but I blew it up. Came to it the next day and it was going flat. So I guess I'm going to sell that if anybody wants a turtle blimp that can't keep air. But yeah, I don't know. I, it's it it's it's hard to know sort of what to do with your collectibles. You know, how much do you need? If it's not on display, is it really bringing you joy? You know, do you collect as an investment? Do you collect for passion? Ben Sachs and I were talking about Big Saxy. We were talking about how oh yeah, Shredder 1982. That's where you can follow him and see his awesome collection. Like one of the things we have in common is we collect for passion. You know, does it makes us feel good. You know, we love it. We don't care about the investment or we're not buying it to think, are we reselling it? Are we setting up a stall? Some people live for the stall and the resell. I detest it. Detest it. I hate it. I just I just like stuff. You know, I'm not uh, poor Jessie, she chose the wrong guy. I'm not looking to get rich. You know, I'm chasing happiness. Whatever happiness was to 10-year-old me, and I was not a happy 10-year-old. So it is funny that I say I'm trying to impress 10-year-old me, but I'd like to think that maybe 10-year-old me would be a little happier if he saw this. And he probably would be. But I'm not going to get into childhood trauma. Or maybe I just did. But that's this show. I'm all over the place. It's what I do. Um, it's what's going to make me different. You know, I could change this and try and conform and go, well, you know, if one of the toy companies hear me not talk about my mental health issues and crazy things and that maybe they'll send me something free or maybe I could be a shield mate. No, that's not who I am or what I do. And even if I wanted to be that, I think that mask would probably stay on for a week and then it would collapse. This is just who I am. It's what I enjoy. It's what I like. It's what I do as a person. And you're either going to love me or hate me. And, you know, and trust me, there's plenty of people that dislike me. There's a whole community of them. Might run into some of them tonight. But yeah, it is what it is. It's just life. I keep saying life goes up, life goes down, but it keeps. We've got to keep trying to push to go up, you know, and push for the world to be a better place. Mostly push to be kinder to each other. I remind myself of that all the time because my humor can be biting at times, and it's like really ultimately I want to be happy and I want you to be happy too. And I think if we go through the world like that, it's a good place to be at. Um, I am your host, Chris Fresh, and you can follow me at Chris Fresh. I've opened up the Instagram because I was having a crisis of faith in terms of social media of am I driving people to the Refreshing Thoughts podcast? Am I driving people to Geek Dudes? Hey, it's a podcast. How about I just post as Chris Fresh? And when it's something to do with one of the other podcasts, I just do a collab. That was the advice of Julian James. I think he does it with Wrestle Rock, and it's probably smart way to do. We do have a Wrestle Rock coming up at the Corner Hotel Friday, May 9th. Come along, it's a good time. I've got the Patreon. Thank you to those that have subscribed so far. I'm going to read it out like an old man. HTTPS www.patreon.com/c/refreshing thoughts podcast /membership. Apparently that will get you to my thing. You didn't write that down. You didn't even read that. You didn't even click that, but I do appreciate everybody that has supported the show so far. And yeah, Geek Dudes and Hey Hey, it's a podcast on my other projects. And thank you to the Shine Worldwide. They provide the awesome intro music. I believe they've been in the studio recording some cool new music. So yeah, give them a follow and check out their music. You have been listening to Refreshing Thoughts. I'm your host, Chris Fresh, and there's going to be some cool openings coming up this week. I promise you, and we'll speak pretty soon.